The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for your time and investing the time to join us today. I truly hope that you are all safe and healthy wherever you are in the world. I'm Mallory Price. As always, I am here to support this webinar. And joining me today, we have Kedron Dillard, Vice President at Shipley. She works with Shipley Consultants and the leadership team to support client engagements. She was instrumental in starting up a public sector proposal center for financial services firm and has also worked with Bloomberg Government in a business development role. David Bohl is a senior vice president here at Shipley, and he is an APMP fellow and has served on the board of APMP. He oversees Shipley business winning practices and provides clients with color team and strategic support on must-win engagements. And Brad Douglas is also joining us, and he will be our moderator for today. He is Executive Vice President here at Shipley and is responsible for our global strategy and winning business training programs. During the webinar, if you have any questions, you can type them into your questions tab on the control panel and we will get to as many as we can. Also, thank you to those of you who submitted questions before the webinar. That helps us really tailor this webinar to your needs. A recording of this presentation will also be posted on the Shipley website by tomorrow. So here is our agenda. We'll just go through this really quickly. We will start by talking about topics based on your registration questions, like I already mentioned, so thank you for submitting those. We'll talk about common pitfalls of color team reviews and how to avoid those. Color team reviews versus decision gate reviews, what are those differences and why those differences are important? Where color teams fit in the proposal and capture process. Best practices and best approach. We'll talk about the flexibility, scalability, and consistency of those best practices in these color team reviews. And then we will get to a few more questions and answers. And like I said, we will get to as many questions as we possibly can. So I think that is about everything. So Brad, I will turn the mic over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mallory. And let me just add, welcome everyone, and thank you for investing time today. We appreciate that and hope you're well. And especially David and Kedron, thank you. I will more or less be like a moderator during the webinar. And I'm going to quickly turn it right over to David. We are going to let David share with us. He has significant experience in the trenches. We're going to jump right into some common pitfalls that he has experienced or seen or heard about related to color teams. So we're going to start there. David, talk to us about some of these pitfalls that we need to try to avoid.
You know, Brad, I'm feeling a little guilty. First of all, thank you, but I'm feeling a little guilty. It seems like every time Shipley seeks an experts who have had bad color teams, my name comes up. And so it's like, a minute, why is that? And I think that's because I've done so many, and they are so strategic, and they have such importance to the outcome of the proposal that, you know, we just need to be careful. So, you know, the whole theme and strategy and the purpose of this is to have successful color team review. So perhaps it should start off with, here's a few common things, 5 to be exact, that I don't care what the color is, I don't care who the customer is, I don't care whether it's federal or whether it's commercial or whether it's international or whether it's small or large. If you're going to have a review, these are pitfalls that you need to avoid. Will they ensure an absolutely successful? No. But they will certainly get you a lot farther down the road and prevent you from having bad ones. The first is no structure. Folks, you've got to come prepared. Regardless of the color, you've got to have a structure that says, okay, here are the documents that we need to review. Here's the goal that we need to have and set forth. Here's the purpose. Here's the people. And, you know, now one of the things that's even more critical, because so many of these are being 100% done virtually, you've got to be able to define where on a SharePoint type of environment, DocuServe type of environment, whatever your platform is, you've got to have a very clear and concise set of directions for everybody and everything. And you've got to have a schedule. And so the whole point is don't get lazy here. Have a clear, concise 1 or 2 or 5 day, whatever it is, make sure that everything is in place, and make sure that it's very easy for everybody to follow. Eliminate the distractions by having a solid structure, and you're good to go. The second thing is the wrong people. We recommend 3 types of people that you should have on these reviews. The first are a certain percentage of the senior leadership in this organization that are going to be held accountable. They need to be there from the very beginning and through the end so that they are aware of what's going on and they have bought into it and can help you should you need it. The second type of people would be those that are familiar with the solution. So in other words, these are the engineering types or the product manager types or the people that own this solution that can tell you, boy, this is good, this is bad, here's our past performance that excelled, whatever. But you need to have people knowledgeable of your solution so that they can give you the criteria and the evaluation you need. The third type is simply someone who knows the customer. In other words, what are their buying habits? What are they really looking for? You know, and kind of give you some insight as to what's really motivating them and how they help. The combination of these 3 people, regardless of the review, is absolutely critical. The third one is too little time. You know, if you have a 300-page document, I assure you, you can't get that reviewed in a day. You know, you just can't. Our recommendation, Shipley's recommendation is in a technical environment, 50 to 60 pages is aggressive. And so if you've got 300 pages, you only have one of 2 solutions. One, you do it in 5 days. Or if you don't have that kind of time, you add more people and you parse it out so that one's doing the first 50, another's doing the second. Don't just because you have a condensed schedule or so on and so forth, don't sit there and say, well, we're going to do this entire document in a half a day. You will get very poor results and a very half-hearted results for your team to go back and do much with. That all 3 of those lend itself to poor planning. Folks, it's like anything else. The better you plan, the better your results are. And then finally, once you have all of this information, once you have the comments, the edits, the new thoughts, the ideas, you've got to hold some people accountable. It doesn't do you any good just to sit there and give the comment sheets or the actual comments embedded into the document back to the writers and say, here you go. You've got to collect these somewhere. You've got to have a record of them. You've got to have an owner. You've got to have a time frame, and you've got to have a comment that says, okay, how was this adjudicated? So, folks, these 5, they look so simple, but you know they can be the death of you in any kind of color team, or if executed well, can increase the quality and the outcome and dramatically increase. I would go a step further to say your probability of winning. Oh,
boy, there's some really good learning points in there, David. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Brad, the next slide, you know, the other thing we want to do is we want to set the stage for this, you know, what is a review compared to what is a decision gate? And really simple, folks, the very simple thing, decision gates are to your business development process where your color team reviews are specific to your document. In other words, you're making decision gates starting way out to the left when you're looking at opportunities, when you're looking at markets, when you're looking at all kinds of high level, and then fine-tuning it down to a very specific opportunity. At each step of the way, you should have some kind of gate. And today's webinar is not about gates, but you should have some kind of gate with all kinds of questions and criteria to say, is it prudent for us to go forward? This involves money, this involves people, this involves capability, this involves your market maturity, so on and so forth. But those same kind of thoughts need to happen in a color team review. As you progress from getting perhaps submitting a white paper through a draft, through the actual RFP, you constantly kind of have to keep evaluating internally and externally, where do we stand? And so today we're going to go through a whole bunch of color team reviews, starting way out early with blue and black. Let's hope they're not black and blue. But the point is we take steps along the way to ensure that we are putting our best foot forward, our best solution forward. And in fact, we have looked internally at our capabilities and externally at what the market thinks of us. And then we begin to evaluate our document response to the customer, and are we posturing our solution to be the one that's going to be selected. So again, decision gates are to the business development process. Color team reviews are specific to the proposal.
Great. Okay, I've just launched a poll for everyone. You can do this right on your keyboard or give an answer by punching it in. We're curious what your backgrounds are. Those of you who've joined us for this webinar today, if you have a chance, just give us your response so we have a feel of our level of understanding of color teams. This might help us shape the rest of what we share. Okay. Great. Good. All right. Here's who we have in the group that provided that information. So several of you come with a very good understanding. Fantastic. We want to then reinforce that and help that. A good number of you have some understanding of color team reviews. Some have heard of them before, not real familiar, and a few no idea. So fair enough. We'll go forward with that in mind. Thank you for doing that. Thank you, David, for going over and color. The reason we even bring up decision gates is they are so linked often to the reviews that we do, because we have to make smart decisions on whether to go forward on a pursuit. So all we're doing here, and you can come back and check this out, this is a lot of information to grasp in a short webinar, is we give a couple of key questions. David mentioned these decision gates. You know, as an opportunity trickles down through the funnel to where we're really going to submit our offer and try to win business, we need to be asking these questions along the way. And if we can't answer favorably and we don't have a go forward plan to win and compete effectively, why? You know, why are we bidding on work where we shouldn't really be involved? So these are just some really good questions for those of us in organizations that are in a role that requires us to qualify our opportunities using some of these decision gates and then moving into color teams. And then again, just a good little checklist for you to go back to, take a look at, and we need to be asking these kinds of questions as we qualify. And as we prepare for these color team reviews, David has brought up, you know, do we require a teaming partner on this? Do we know who the key decision makers are? What are their hot buttons and requirements and needs? The stakeholders, do we know them? Is there any conflict of interest in this deal, this opportunity we need to be aware of? Who are the probable competitors? These kinds of qualification questions are so important to us as we advance our opportunity along through our sales pipeline. So here's those phases of our business development. As you can see, we've got opportunities that our BD people, our marketing people, our lead generation people are putting into the pipeline, and here are those decision gates. All right, that we need to be looking at. Do we have enough interest to go forward? Okay, let's advance it. Pursuit decision, preliminary bid decision, validate that. Make sure we really want to bid, and should we, at the end of the day, submit a proposal. Absent these decision gates and the color team reviews we're going to talk about today, you know, this is what's going to trickle out the back end. You know, we're going to either not have that many opportunities to bid on because they all fell through the cracks, or we're going to be bidding on the wrong type of opportunities. So just wanted to tie in this whole notion of qualifying opportunities through decision gates and how that leads to these color teams. So Kedron, I'm going to ask you if you would now, what we've done is mapped out here. you can see these same phases. All right, all of us are in a business development life cycle of some sort. We're somewhere along this continuum of trying to win work and win business. We've talked about now these decision gates. Now, Kedron, would you walk us through where these color teams fit into this timeline here?
Absolutely. Thank you, Brad. As you just said, and as David teed up as well, we've talked a bit about already, the decision gate workflow. And what you see here is how those color teams map to, how the various color team reviews map to those decision gate kind of milestones. I think the next slide, Brad, gives another perspective or another view of that, right? So again, you have your, bid decision workflow, and in this view, kind of cutting it between a capture phase, your capture phase and your proposal, pursuit phase, which color teams apply within those two phases. So you'll see capture, we're looking at blue team in your black hat, and in your proposal pursuit phase, it's pink, red, and gold team, with the white team being post submission. So let's kind of high level describe what these color team reviews mean, or how we define them, right? So your blue team, blue and black team, as we said, is within the capture planning phase. The blue team is described at a high level is assessing the capture planning activities that have been completed, right? How much does your capture or does your BD team know the customer? What is the depth of the customer relationship? And how much do we know that the initial technical and management solutions that we plan to put forward within the proposal or through the proposal? Your black hat is, think of competition, right? And so your black hat is where you want to assess your own strengths and weaknesses of your solution, but also put yourself in the shoes of your competition, and what are their strengths and weaknesses, and how might they ghost you, or how do you perceive that they will ghost? What are their values, their value propositions that they're going to put forward to the customer, and how might you keep that in mind or tailor your approach accordingly. On the proposal side, you have, on the proposal development side, you have 4 color teams, right? Your pink, your red, your green team, and your gold, right? And so on the pink team, how we define that is kind of a high-level review of your planning document, your mock-ups, your storyboards. You're still leveraging that capture plan, obviously. You're providing the proposal team strengths, weaknesses, recommendations for improvements. All of this is done within the pink team before the hard work of drafting the text. So you want to review the storyboards and the mock-ups before the hard writing begins within the proposal process.
So Kedron, in thinking of the slide a couple before this with that horizontal timeline, what you're suggesting then is the pink team comes quite early once we have some kind of formal solicitation from the customer.
You got it.
Okay.
You got it. Earliest as possible within the proposal, once you decide to pursue, as earliest as possible.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm. Your red team review is, and I hesitate a little bit here, by definition, the red team review is set up to fix, for minor fixes of your proposal, right? You're going to, not necessarily by the time you get to your red team review, it's not the time to do a major overhaul of your proposal and or your pursuit. It's to, it's to review, it's to fix kind of minor approaches or minor tweaks within your proposal. Ideally, it's to predict the proposal scoring against the customer evaluation criteria. I do hesitate because I have been on red teams or have been the proposal manager that I've set up red team reviews. And there are times where I absolutely did overhauls post the red team review. It just depends on kind of the maturity of the team and where we are in our pursuit, and quite frankly, how well our capture and how well we planned for that proposal. But the key is to stay flexible. But that is the core definition of your red team review. On the green, from a green team perspective, it's pricing. Think green, think money. So it's how well does the pricing that you've teed up in your proposal, how well does that map to your estimated price to win? What is your ROI? So it's really the financial view of the proposal that you're looking at within the green team review. And your gold team is kind of one last check before the proposal is, kind of goes into production and final delivery, right? And so it's ensuring that all of the feedback from these various color team reviews, have been incorporated. It's still one voice. It's again, kind of one last view of edits, but all of this is done prior to production and final signatures and delivery to the customer. And finally, your white hat review is post-submission, right? And so I've always looked at white hat reviews to have two different perspectives, if you will. You have an internal white hat, so an internal kind of lessons learned with the pursuit team. Where are opportunities for improvement? What did we do well? What do we want to replicate? And it's also more of an external review, lessons learned with the customer. So, typically when I've had, more private sector customer related, bids, you can quickly get the customer on the phone or have a physical debrief and get feedback. For government bids, that might take some time, but it's absolutely important that you have that customer, that external view in terms of how your product presented for future lessons learned.
Great, good. Thank you, Kedren. Very helpful overview and how that all fits within the capture and the proposal development phases. I'm going to pause right here for a minute. We have actually some really good questions that have been submitted while we've been going, as well as a couple relevant to this that were submitted even before. And yes, let me just reinforce that, yes, we will make this presentation available to you, and we'll post it on our website, all of the slides. There was a question, we showed a pink team 1 and a pink team 2, and I'll just address that really quick. That really just references sometimes organizations, companies want to do an early check of the win strategy, as Kedren mentioned, very early, once we see the solicitation, and then they want to do a second one. They want to just like halfway through, if we've got 2 weeks, 3 weeks to respond, partway through, they just want to do a quick double check on a pink team to make sure strategically our response is headed in the right direction. That's the only difference between pink team 1 and 2, really, because then you're butting up against a red team review where you're looking at the final. And then there's a couple of questions, what about small companies, where we're resource limited, things like that. This, Kedren said it, this has to be scaled. But there are any size bid, any size company, we should at least, if not formally, informally, be doing at least a pink and red team review. Well, and we better make sure our costs are in line. So, even if they're 1 hour, 30-minute double check, that strategically we're on target as far as the quality of our messaging in the actual content for the red team, and we better have our financial game. We better be right on to make sure we're not losing business on this deal. So great questions coming in, and thank you for those. There's another question. Does Shipley recommend a template or checklist for all of these reviews? Yes, we do. whether that's a web-based, tool or template that we can interact with, collaborate with, or good old-fashioned, Microsoft Word template or hard copy. But yes, if we're not working off of consistent templates and checklists, we're opening up a lot of room for error. So thank you for these questions. We're going to try to come back to some more of them as we go. But we got several questions. We gave you a chance to submit questions when you registered, and we would not have normally probably covered this topic in relationship to color teams, but several of you asked, and so where does these color team reviews fit with Agile, all the Agile activity that's going on? So here's a food for thought. All right, there are a lot of us that believe Agile really is more of a mindset of how we do our work, our design, our development, our project management. It's more of a mindset than it is a methodology. But here's a quote from the Agile Alliance. If Agile's a mindset, then what does that say about the idea of Agile methodologies? To answer this questions, you might find it helpful for a definition of methodology. And then we go on, he goes on and describes what methodology is. It means that the team is going to have its own methodology, which will be different in either small or large ways for every team's methodology. There is no one exact, precise approach. It is a methodology is a set of conventions that a team agrees to follow. So if we've agreed to follow a color teaming approach to making sure our proposals are the very best quality to go out, okay, it is Agile. So Agile methodologies are conventions that a team chooses to follow in a way that follows Agile values. What are some of those values and principles? Here we've just listed a few. Principle 4 of the 12 Agile principles is that business people and developers should work together daily throughout the project. Substitute the word proposal. A proposal is a project. And we, as proposal people, should be working with our solution people, our design people, our technical SMEs, working together daily to come up with the very best solution we can. Agile principle number 4. Principle number 5, build projects, proposals around motivated individuals. How hard is it when we got a team of people who aren't motivated? They really don't care that much if we win or lose this deal. Frustrating. So give them an environment and the support they need, and then trust them to do the job. Principle number 5. This absolutely applies to proposals and how we implement this methodology. Principle number 12 of Agile. At regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective and then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. David, if we gave David Bowl 2 hours today, he would talk nonstop about the importance of regular, routine, daily interval meetings, status meetings. Of who? A team of highly motivated individual that wants to do what? They want to work together for the good of the project. So that's how this all fits into this mindset of Agile, and so what we did here, and we won't dwell on this, but you can come back to it. There's various stages typically of Agile projects, and I'm sure many of you are already familiar with this. Stage 1, 2, 3, 4, here's 7 stages. And you can see, you can map these color teams that Kedron just walked us through to these various stages. Of course, they're talking about product development and projects. Well, at the end of the day, a proposal is a product. It's a product to sell our solution, and it's a project. It takes a lot of people, a lot of moving parts. So blue team, pink team fits in with stage 4 as an iteration. Are we strategically aligned? A sprint review in stage 6. All right, we're nearing the finish line. We've got a sprint. Do we have the right final draft to review? And look at stage 7, a sprint retrospective, a meeting where the team discusses how the sprint went and plans for improvement on the next sprint. If we're not doing our white hat lessons learned reviews, we're not being agile in our approach and in our style. So we just wanted to bring that in because so many of you ask about it, and that it's not something we'd normally link into color team reviews, but it aligns, and it aligns really, really well. So we've got to adapt our approach for reviews, whether we're small company, like David said, or work in government, or business to business, business to international, or nonprofit, education. Are we pursuing grants? If we're going after grants, if we're going after agency funding, we're a government agency and we've got to bid for our own workload, so be it. We've still got to go through this process of these color team reviews. So we've got to be willing to prepare for these color team reviews, conduct, and respond. The key is to be agile, really, adapt, and flexible. So with that, David, I'm going to ask you if you would walk us through a little bit more about this critical review we call a blue team review.
No, excuse me, Brad. I was multitasking and I was simultaneously conducting a red team while we're on this call.
Oh, yeah. So, you're so funny.
Anyway, folks, I read your questions, and before we get started here, for a couple things, buckle up, because we're starting to get into the real nuts and bolts with the actual reviews, description, who plays, so on and so forth. But let me answer a couple questions before we get started. The first one is, what reviews are most important? That was asked 6 different ways, but all had the same, what are important? And the simple answer is they all are. But, they just, if you're now getting a proposal and you don't have any pre-proposal planning, you've already lost the opportunity really to do a blue and a black review. So that eliminates it. I think Brad earlier said, Kedron confirmed that, a pink, a red, and a green, those 3, they're not negotiable in my book, folks. You have to have them. A pink because it can save you so much time and effort and money by getting you down the right path started early. A red because it is the finality that if that's the only final review you're going to have, it does a lot of things. It checks your compellingness for your story, your responsiveness, your compliance, and just the whole, how well did you respond to the customer's needs? And then of course, boy, if you're not reasonable and price competitive, all your time goes to waste. So that's one of the answers. The second answer is, what are the timing of this? And again, the earlier you can do this, you see here that the blue and the black are in capture planning. The earlier you can get started on this, provided you have the intelligence to do it, is the guidance there. Inside of a proposal, it's a little bit more finite. Our recommendations are, let's highlight a 60-day proposal. Within 10% or within 6 days timing, you should have a kickoff, okay? And if you had your writer's packages that suggest here's what you're going to do and here's who's going to respond to what, so on and so forth, you're off to a good start. About a third of the way in, or 18 to 20 days, you should have a pink team, and we'll see what that's involved. About 65% of the way in, or maybe a little bit later if you're only going to have a red team, but if you're going to have a red and a gold, somewhere around the 65% or 42, 45 days in a 60-day turnaround, that's when you should have a red team. Pretty close to that is a green team. You would argue that a red team defines your solution. You should be able to price it out. And then about 85 to 90%, you've got to leave your team time to recover, to adjudicate, to produce, and to publish. That's probably when you should have a gold team, if you're going to have a red team and a gold team. So just a little bit of extra, bonus information in there. All right, blue team. We got 2 reviews here initially before you know, the RFP comes out. And folks, anybody who knows me, I will tell you that the capture phase, the intelligence gathering, the understanding of the environment and the competition and your core capabilities are the most critical phase in any proposal. The more intelligence you have, the greater your probability of winning. The other way around, you decrease your probability of winning. So we have two meetings up front. We have the blue team. The blue team takes a look at us internally. We have somehow determined what our strategies are, what our solutions are, what kind of people we're going to apply, what kind of past performance. And so we are taking a look at how well are we staged, that if this RFP comes out the way we think it is, will we align favorably? Will we have more strengths and weaknesses? Can we play? Can we compete? Can we win? So it happens early in the capture. This is before the RFP. We have a lot of account managers and perhaps research people gathering this kind of information. As Brad said, with the strategic decision gates, we have, in this case, before the capture, we have kind of thought, okay, this might be our solution. This might be our strategies. We are taking a look at that. So this reviews the knowledge of the customer and the opportunity, providing guidance on our solution. So it is taking a look at what we feel it's going to win based on what we think the customer is going to ask for. So it gut checks our reality, all right? Next, and then here's what happens. We are looking at the opportunity description. We are looking at how well we have gathered intelligence. That's the capture plan. We have determined, because of maybe this is a recompete or we just know the customer so well, we know what our solution is going to be. Remember, the RFP is not out. We have our own competitive position, and it's either one of a lot of experience, a lot of past performance, or we are going to want to get into this market, and we have to know the difference. We absolutely have to have strategies on what it's going to take to win. Hope is not a strategy here, folks. We need to understand, and we need to challenge those who are going to play. Tell us what it's going to take to win. And then, okay, not only tell us what it's going to take, how we are going to get there. What are we going to leverage? What are we going to describe? What are we going to illustrate? Who are we going to promote? You know, what kind of past performance, whatever. And so all this comes into a review way before this bid is out. This is still in the capture phase. And we come up with a game plan based on our own internal assessment of our strengths, weaknesses, and gaps. Now, if we have a lot of weaknesses and if we have gaps, does that mean we can't go forward? No. That means we have to come up with a mitigation plan on how to fill that. We might have to team and build a team that meets those gaps and weaknesses. We might have to hire. We might have to acquire. But the point is we come up with a plan going forward that gives us definite actionable items before this RFP even comes out, so that it strengthens our position. And, you know, one of the deliverables are like the action plan. On or about the same time, from the other perspective, looking at us from how the customer perceives us, is the black hat. This is kind of, I'm going to guess, folks, and it's a guess, that these two team reviews on all the people that are on this call are probably the least ones that we perform, because they're difficult, they're tough, and they're just, you know, they're not in our core comfort level and our core competency. Black hat requires that we get a lot of people that know the market. And so we're looking for maybe 3 different types of people here. We're looking for people that from the outside in know us. We're looking for people that from the outside in know our solution, or what the solution needs to be and how well we are positioned. And then the third would be, you know, how well do the people know our competitors and their solutions? And so the goal of this meeting is okay, boy, you got to have thick skin here, folks, because you're asking these folks to tell us where we stand. This is their view. So these are fairly sophisticated industry leaders. I mean, you know, sometimes they're consultants that are pretty highly priced, because you are paying for that intelligence and that level. And so you're getting all this input about you, you're getting all this input about the solution, you're getting all this information about the competition, and you know what it's doing? It's going to tell you where you rank and where you stack. It's going to show you the competitors' probable solutions on each hot button you've described. And, you know, you could score a 5 or a 10 and your competitions could score a 15 or a 20. There's a weakness there, folks. It has to be, you know, it has to be resolved. And so the benefit to you, the value to you is early on, before you commit a whole lot of resources and you commit a whole lot of time and energy and perhaps give up another bid because you think this one is so strong because of your position. These people will either confirm that or they won't. And so you have a really good understanding of what path you need to go down. So when the RFP comes out, you can mate that information with your gathered information from your black team and your blue team. And now you have a very, very strong set of strategy statements to carry into your initial pink team review. So
Hey,
both
David.
of these, yep.
David, what happens? Because some of us, you know, we don't always see opportunities coming. You know, in an ideal world, we've positioned ourselves well and everything, but sometimes we get these bluebird drop-ins, you know, that all of a sudden a prospective customer wants a proposal or bid, or we've kind of been positioning, but this RFP or request comes out way earlier than we thought. So we really haven't been able to do this blue or black hat reviews, team reviews. What do we do if we're kind of blindsided, not blindsided, but surprised at an RFP release or a bid request? Do we still go to this effort, or do we just say it's water under the bridge, let's just do the best proposal we can?
Well, Brad, you know, it's difficult at this point in time, but I would maybe think along the lines of a little less formality and a little bit more informality, and try and still maybe a half-day session or maybe a three-quarter-day session instead of a formal meeting, and still, you know, get the appropriate people, the leadership, the solution architects, the customer knowledge people, and run this by your blue team. So, you know, there is consistency among everybody that's going to play the blue team content. What are your strategies? What is your solution? What's it going to take going forward? These are so critical to stress in a pink team that if you can get that meeting in, even in an informal environment, I would go to it. Black team is a little bit more difficult because now there's that cone of silence out there. The RFP is hit. You know, you've got probably a little few restrictions, and now people are holding a little bit more information closer to their vest. But you can reach out. You can kind of, for example, an industry day might be a good, you know, place to kind of gather, hey, these people are playing, and, you know, then you do a little bit of research and see what their solutions have been in the past. What you will lose if the RFP comes out is any kind of formal intelligence from the customer. At that point in time, you absolutely cannot, unless it's in an OTA environment, you cannot ask the customer questions about, you know, if you had this teammate, or if you had these people, or if you offered this solution, what do you think? And so you're not going to get that information. So, but that doesn't mean you can't gather other bits and pieces of information that would give you some intelligence as to what your competition is doing and perhaps how the customer actually views you. You may have had outstanding past performance and it might be a clear sale, or you may have struggled and you're going to have to address that with your strategies. So anyway.
Okay, good.
All right, folks. Here comes the you know, the knockout punches. Pink team. Again, the pink team should be about 10% into the RFP, and what you're doing here is you've had a successful kickoff, and you know, now you have a document, you know what the requirements are, they're final, they're set. You know, you now can validate your preliminary solution as to is it the right one, and you can double check your strategies, and that's exactly what the pink team's going to do. So on a 60-day, you're doing it within the first week, and you're taking a look at Your proposal strategies, do they align? You're looking at, the instructions and what's it going to take? Is it 1 volume? Is it 5 volumes? Is it 50 pages? Is it 5,000 pages? And then you're comparing those sections and those factors to, okay, what's the evaluation criteria? Where do we spend our most effort and make sure that we excel, and so on and so forth? We come up with an outline. Typically in a lot of proposals, they'll come straight out and tell you what the structure is, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, you now can either electronically, there's a lot of software packages out there, or manually, you can create your compliance checklist. And, we have a tool. There are other tools out there. We call it a storyboard. Some people will call it an annotated, outline. But the bottom line is you're creating essentially a mock-up, if you will, of what your solution's going to be. And so now here's the goal of the pink team. You have all this high-level information, and I think one of the very worst factors of this COVID-19 is it takes us away from a war room. And if you had a war room, you would put all this stuff up on a wall, but now you have to do it in a computer, room, if you will, a SharePoint site, whatever. But you make available all these storyboards to the pink team people, and you assign sections to people. Again, you're looking for 3 types of people. You want to get your leadership in there because they need to own it, and they need to not surprise you down the road with changes that because of their stature they can make. Get them involved early so they're buying in early. The second type of people is the architects, the engineers, the subject matter experts of your solution, and the third people are the people who know the customer. Do not put the writers in there. These people, they can't critique their own stuff. You want to have people with fresh set of eyes and trust them that they actually have read the proposal before they get to the review. So you have this review. And so basically what you're asking for before you have sent your authors out to write, before you have spent a lot of money, and before you have done hardly any writing at all, the value here is that you confirm and you quantify your strategy going forward, so there is a buy-in that says if we go down this path, we will win this, or we put ourselves in the best position to win. And it recommends what we are going to do and what we need to do and how we need to illustrate and what we need to define, what we need to prove and demonstrate, so on and so forth. Now, this third bullet's kind of tricky here on the verified compliance checklist. Our recommendation is that at this point in time, all you have is a storyboard. And the reason being is because that eliminates a lot of wasted writing, because we want to get confirmation of the direction early. So it needs to be to the extent that we can evaluate it, but it doesn't need to be a full-blown first draft. And so by not having a full-blown first draft, you will not have all those requirements addressed. You will have most of them addressed. The point here is if we continue down this path, and if we do what that strategy suggests, remember, a strategy always has a verb. If we do that actionable item, will we in fact meet the requirements? And so you have to say yes. So is compliance, 100% accurate here? Absolutely not. But at least it takes us down the right direction. And so the benefit of the pink team is to get us all on board. And, Brad and Kedron will tell you that, the more we plan and the more we understand what we are going to write versus just going out and writing it, the higher the quality will be because we've actually planned. And by far, the amount of rewrites will be minimized, and the amount spent at a very critical time will not be wasted. So, this pink team is critically important, Brad.
Yeah, and and then the work begins, right?
Right.
Then we begin really putting together the story, the content, and time goes on, and we get toward what David suggested, toward that 75, 80, 85% mark of leading up to submittal, which no matter what size of organization or proposal, we've got to be doing this red team, Kedron. So I was wondering if you just
100.
hit the highlights of this.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Brad. And sorry to interrupt, but I did want to reiterate, something, one of the questions you posed earlier. And my experience specifically, when I was part of an early stage, immature public sector vertical within the financial services industry, or even responding, to, a more business to business focused proposal, this red team review was critical. And if I had, if I only had, the bandwidth and attention of my leadership team for one review, it was this red team review. So to your point and to David's point, it's ideally the red team is scheduled about 2/3 of the way between the proposal kickoff meeting and the submission to the customer. It's the purpose is to, score against the evaluation criteria. Your inputs are going to be, your final draft, or where, as final as that draft is at that point. You want to include the evaluation criteria. Or the evaluation factors, you want to ensure you have clear instructions, assignments, and a compliance checklist that you're giving to all those that are going to participate in the review. And the output is, okay, what does the scoring prediction look like? And that's where a lot of the time post red team is going to be dedicated to, in terms of reconciling where people felt that the final draft scored, any type of cleanup, and obviously documenting the findings from the red team review accordingly.
And Kedron, someone in the question box just barely asked, do we use checklists and forms and templates and things?
Yeah.
And we should, all of us should have
Absolutely.
some sort of tools, right?
Absolutely, to stay consistent, especially if you have, some red team participants involved in, many proposals, right? You have the same kind of participants across, most of your responses. You want to get them in the habit of seeing these forms and utilizing these forms. It just makes it easier for everyone. So these forms, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, that they are attached in the handouts tab of this webinar. So these are kind of examples of some of those red team forms, a summary, a debriefing document, et cetera.
Yeah, I think in the handouts, you're going to find, and everyone's, go download it, save it. It's instructions actually for a white hat. But when we send out the post-webinar thank you note to you, we'll include a couple of these tools for you, so you have a feel for what they are. So thank you for that. Green team.
Green team, we talked about think pricing, right? So the ROI, it's usually the last half of the proposal that this takes place in terms of inputs, outputs for your green team. Again, instructions, any type of pricing to win strategy that you've had, the basis of your estimates, pricing calculations, and the output. Truly, when I've conducted or been a part of green teams, it's I need approval that the pricing that we have is what we want to go with, right? So sure, there's additional texture and additional discussion that's helpful, but what I'm looking at is, do I have sign off on that pricing, right? And that's the essence of the green team. And the gold team, as I said, is just to ensure that all of the feedback received in the red team and the green team for that perspective is incorporated. It's clean. It's, again, as I said earlier, in one voice. Essentially, is the document ready for production and for the customer? Is the essence of the gold team, right? So approval, and if there are any recommended changes, if there is something that's missed, it's noted in the output for the gold team.
Hey,
white
David,
team,
excuse me, I'm sorry, Kedron. David,
That's
you ever
okay.
seen a proposal stopped at gold team?
Absolutely, Brad. Again, if there's something that you absolutely, it's going to lose money, or if you're just not comfortable, or it's just not right, better to stop it now and recover your costs simply from pre-production than to enter into a contract and take multiple years of losses because of the terms and conditions of the proposal. So yeah, absolutely, it can be now.
Big, that's a big learning point, and it takes courage, at this
Oh,
point.
Absolutely.
We've invested so heavily and made such a strong business case at each one of these decision gates, and then pull the plug. But that's what good business leaders do, right? Is make the right choice. So.
yeah.
100%. And then finally, the white hat after submission. So, documenting lessons learned, both from an internal perspective. So what did we do right? What are our successes? What are some potential workarounds or opportunities for improvement? And then from an external perspective, what is the feedback from the customer? What informal comments, can the customer provide to us? How do we incorporate that in business going forward? And I think the key here is where you document this feedback, right? So documenting of both the shortcomings or the areas of improvement and the successes, the things that we want to ensure we continue to do in future pursuits, and any additional process improvements associated with bids going forward.
Yeah. A colleague of mine used to always say, lessons gathered aren't always lessons learned. And isn't that the truth?
No kidding.
It's one thing to gather what we did right, wrong, how we could improve. It's another thing to be willing to go back and actually review that the next time around, and continuously improve.
And incorporate, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
And you mentioned the tools associated, that will be, white hat is part of our toolkit that we will share with participants to this webinar.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think that's the next slide. Cool.
Yeah, there's a nice, actually one of the favorite Shipley tools of mine is this lessons learned survey, where we can go out to those that were involved in this pursuit at any phase, early in the capture through the proposal, and gather input to try to improve. So yeah, in our little thank you note for the webinar, just you'll see where you can go get a couple of these tools to help you and build your own. We're not at all suggesting that this is in any way, the one and only secret sauce to running these color teams, but tools are very important. So you've been gracious in giving us your time today. David, Kedron, thank you for your expertise and insight. Just a couple final things as in spirit of review. It's important wherever you are in whatever organization that we put some focus on an approach to competing and winning. Things are getting more competitive, not less. Things are getting more complex, not more simple. We have to agree organizationally. We have to agree on a single documented approach to competing and winning. We can't just go about it ad hoc and reinvent the wheel every time. It'll bury us. We need to tailor and scale whatever approach. This gets to the Agile approach. We're not dictating that there should be 7 phase in your business development life cycle, or certain tools, or 6 decision gates. It's got to be tailored and scaled to you and your environment. Both Kedron and David mentioned how important key personnel are. Boy, if we find a keeper that really knows what they're doing and really has the passion and energy for business development and winning, hang on to them. So commit to a single discipline approach, document it, and hold people accountable to it, and we've got a much better chance of winning. The benefits of doing that: it'll save us money, frustration, rework. We will be more productive, especially in these times of having to work virtual. Isn't it hard to work virtual if there's no set process for us and everything is ad hoc? Much better to have a disciplined approach that is documented and a roadmap to follow. So whatever size your organization, whatever market or industry you're in, we couldn't state this enough. the importance of getting it documented, getting it agreed to, and get people to buy in. Your approach should be flexible and agile, tailorable, scalable, and build it around best practice. Go talk to other firms and companies and organizations, see what they're doing, and take the best of the best and make it work for you. And this has also been mentioned several times. If our process and our approach and methodology, our tools, if it's not championed at the senior level, we don't have a stakeholder at the senior level of our organization to champion business development, capture, proposal development, it's probably going to be derailed at some point along the way. So seek that champion to champion our cause. So again, just in summary, define the approach, fit it to your organization, document the roles and responsibilities, hold people accountable, and get that executive buy-in. We'll do much better. For consistency, here's some key points. We should be disciplined, standardize those decision gates, make sure we have the right people. Those are the consistency elements. As far as flexibility goes, it doesn't matter how many phases you have in your approach, just get it documented and agreed to, or decision gates. The color teams, we've presented here some basic ones, some standard ones that are well used, well accepted, but create your own, develop your own set of reviews that you want to hold fast to. And then keep time available, make sure you monitor and adapt to the size and the risk, the importance of the opportunity. Too many cooks in the kitchen can be a problem, so make sure we've got the right number of people involved in the engagement, in the proposal, and that commitment from leadership. If you'd like, our next free webinars are here. You'll find those on our website under resources. We list all of our webinars, so we have one coming up in August. We're going to talk about some bad habits that we might want to take a look at and try and break, even though it's not the new year. It's a good time to take a look at some bad habits, and we're going to then in September talk about if you snooze, you lose, what we can do better on the front end of qualifying opportunities to make sure we're competing for the right work. So those are our next two. These are the things we covered. We've summarized it, I think, for you already. But thank you all so much for your time today, for joining us. We've tried to address your questions as we go. So in the spirit of respecting your time, I think we're going to let you all go. Thank you for your time. Kedron and David, thank you so much. And please, if you want to join us next in August for our next webinar, we'd love to have you. So everybody have a great day, be safe, take care. And if we can help in any way, please let us know. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you all.